Hey, beloved, how are you? I hope you're good. I'm good. Glad to be with you. Just excited about this session tonight. God has been good to me. I hope to you. I am still in the hotel, so just in case, I don't know if this is your first time or whatever, but I am still in the hotel. But nevertheless, welcome to the Urban Apologetics channel. I've got something, oh man, I have got all of these sessions and talking about the black church origin have had some real sweet nuggets in them. But I've got some stuff for you tonight that I know is going to be an absolute blessing and move you further towards being the smartest person in the room as it pertains to this topic. So, as I have said, in the past week, if you hear some noise, hopefully nobody knocking on the door, but if you hear a kid running down the hall or anything like that going on, just remember, I am in a hotel. These people have been so great, and I'm blessed because of it, but I sure would like to go home. It's coming. I'm learning patience, but you're welcome to be with me tonight. I got a few things I want to share with you. As your own personal knowledge junkie, I've got some really good things that I think are going to be a blessing to you, and some things that I'm gonna say that are kind of not off the beaten path, but that I think are important for you to consider as we go through this. Let me throw this in so that it makes sense, and then I'll get to some of the other stuff that I want to say. It's just important that you understand that what happened in the past does relate to today. I keep forgetting to not put the man cave sign up there. We're not in the man cave. Anyway, but it does relate to today. The systemic things that were put in place, and I've shown you, some stuff from the 1600s, that system that was put in place still exists today. We're still affected by that. So it's not like I'm showing you something and all of that's in the past and it doesn't matter. Like what I've shared with you before when someone says, well, my parents were immigrants and they came here in the 20th century, in the early 1900s. Yeah, that may be true, but the system was already in place. The system of oppression, the system, right? Now, God overrides all of that if we are in Christ, but it is important for us to understand what happened in the past so we know what it is we're dealing with and what we're coming up against. Now that I'm here, let me throw this in. It's very important for us to understand that poverty brings about certain things in this world. And it doesn't matter what country you're in or where you are, none of that matters, what your ethnos is. It doesn't matter. When there's poverty, there's certain things that come from it. There are companies that, we talk about what happens in the black ghettos. Well, there's not some innate character in black people that creates crime. But when we talk about those kinds of things, it's good for us to think about the unfortunate situation of when factories moved overseas and in white neighborhoods where meth and things like that became prominent, crime went up, because that's a part of it. Well, the ghettos were a system that was put together on purpose in the 1880s. And black people were forced to live there, and the way they were designed and what was supposed to come out of it is what happened. So as we go through these things and talk about these systems and talk about, the connections to black history and whatever way we're discussing it, it is relevant if we're still being affected by it today. And we are. All right, let me get back to some station identification stuff. I haven't done this for a while. If you're watching this on Jackie Jackson Facebook Live, I am also on YouTube. Now, what I like about YouTube, wanting you to like and share and subscribe and all of that, and people are starting to do that more and more, you can, it's stagnant. It's not stagnant when it's on YouTube. I mean, on Facebook, it just, just whatever else gets on my timeline, it goes further and further down. But on YouTube, you can pause it, you can look for specific messages, and it will enlighten you. And if you are watching on YouTube, God bless you, thank God for you. I want you to make sure that you like it and share it and all of that kind of stuff. But I want to make sure that you also know there's other ways to get in touch. Okay, now I want to talk a little bit about, this is my 10th anniversary on the radio. I'm excited about that, but I'm even more excited about this series and the possibilities in this series. And some of this stuff I'm going to go over kind of fast, but just want you to go, whether you're looking at it, hearing it on the radio now or on the website or whatever. We're in a miracle series, right? Kind of the 2/3 through. And it's just an absolute blessing, because I'm not only telling you stories of when miracles have happened, I am telling you how to get manifestation in your own life. And so I just really, really, really encourage you to go. It's one of the longest series that I ever did, because I wanted to make sure that people that I've ever done, because I wanted to make sure that people were able to grasp this information and understand and take my time and explain how these things work. I've had many, many miracles of healing, miracles of rain and weather things, and people with finance, all kinds of great things have happened. And I want to show you how to get yours. All right? So let's move on now. I remind you, as always, it's adult Bible study, but I got another little advertisement that I want to make sure that I do tonight, as we continue in our series looking at the Black church. And I'm reminding you what Malcolm X said: education is our passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to the people that prepare for it today. There is a purpose in learning our history, Black history. All right, Black history is American history. So it's good for white, black, don't matter. We need to know. And when you don't know your past, when you have no root, you're subject to all kinds of things. Now, over the last couple of sessions, there's something that I've said, and it's a reason for those last 2 slides. Give the kids to me. 70%. I've been saying this now for over a year and a half. 70% of young Black men and women leave the church because they have no apologetic when someone tells them that Christianity is the white man's religion. Now, in the last few sessions that I've done, if you haven't heard them, go back and listen to them, because I've dealt with that issue. Okay? And I'm going to briefly hit it today, but not in the kind of detail that I've already done. I've dealt with that issue. Okay, and we have young Black men have all kinds of challenges that they're facing. I've used this slide over and over again because it makes sense. All of these various temptations. And without a good biblical foundation, they are subject to whatever is going on around them, because it looks normal. But we can teach them. I desire to. Listen, I said this before. They don't want to teach this in schools. What I'm going to show you tonight, this is American history, and they don't want to teach this in schools. I'll teach them. And I'm looking for ideas. Where? What kind of forum? I've done stuff at Sharonville Convention Center and done these in individual churches, but can't let, because we can't get the public schools to do it, to still let our kids just be ignorant as if we're subject to whatever's going on around us. We need them to be able to break up whatever chains are binding them. All right? This is beautiful. We will rise this wounded world into a wondrous one. There is always light. If only we're brave enough to see it. If only we're brave enough to be it. I believe that. I believe that we have the potential through the things that I'm telling you will help you become the smartest person in the room, that you can go and teach your children, but also getting them around this kind of teaching. I'm not angry and mad at white folks. It's not a militant kind of thing. It's just peer-reviewed research. Now, I'm not going to take this time in every single message, but I want you to get this. I want you to understand the importance of this. I want you to comment. Tell me what you think. Give me ideas of ways to spread this to our young people, young and old. All right. I always come with the receipts. So tonight, there are links, resources, there are books that you can look at. And here's a few. I'm just going to get these on the recording. All right. I'll be giving some quotes from some writing that I've done in the past. When I say these names instead of showing you the books, you can go back and you can look this up. So I'm just making sure that these get on the recording. Got it? Okay. A little bit of a recap. Okay, so where did the black church begin? It began in the Garden of Eden. What was the first organized church where a group of people were traveling together? It's Moses, and he was black. Jesus, Proto-Asiatic, not just Asiatic, the first Asiatic people were black. I've gone over that many, many, many times. So when we look at the black church, we cannot say that Christianity is the white man's religion or reject it because of that when we had it first. It doesn't make black people better or anything like that. And I'm just getting about tired of prefacing that. And I know some people get, all messed up in the head when they hear that. But it's true that black people had it first. It was taken, stolen. The characters that were black were made white. And white folks black folks are rejecting something that was theirs in the first place. And we moved forward and we took a look at an article that was written by 1619. And I don't have Jude 3 up here. Jude 3 is on Facebook. Great group of folks. I've been looking at their stuff, and we understand now through what I've shown you and through articles that are like this, that the first black folks that came here, the first groups of black folks that came here, there were Christians among those groups. Slaves that were brought here did not all come here as pagans or whatever. There were Christians in those groups. There are stories. Try not to get back into all the detail, but there are stories where there were black Christians, when there was still freedom in this country, asking for Christian baptism and Christian marriage. It's not a construct of the white man that black people grasped along the way and were deceived and bought into and all of that kind of stuff. Yeah, I'm going to show you tonight where, it was used in a lot of ways for oppression, but black people were having experiences with God. Are you listening to me? Are you hearing me? Got something I'm going to read to you. I think this is a good place to do a really good recap. I'm going to be off camera quite a bit tonight, but that's okay, as long as you get the information. All right, let me identify these people before I read this. That's Harry Hoosier, that's top left, who is one of the first black preachers. That's where this in the 1700s. It's where we get the Hoosier, Indiana Hoosiers term from. Under him, a little bit further down the road, is Richard Allen, who created the first black church in the United States. Jumping back a little bit, the very first black preacher was a British loyalist who in the Revolutionary War was on the British side, and those loyalists were, they created a place in Birchtown, which is in Scandinavia, Nova Scotia. I don't know where that one came from Nova Scotia. And he helped develop a church there. A very short life, but helped develop a church there. There were two great awakenings, and I've talked about George Whitefield that John Morant got saved under, also from England. And the first great awakening, we're going to look at something that'll just touch on that a little bit, and then a Cane Ridge revival. And one of the things that I want to point out is how black folks and white folks were worshiping together, and none of that racism stuff made any difference once the Spirit of God came in and took over, which makes me question, what are people doing? In the Spirit, what are people doing if they don't have the love in their heart that's necessary, that God commands us to have, so that we can all walk in harmony? Martin Luther King said, if we don't learn to live together, we're going to perish as fools. All right, a little bit of reading to do tonight, but very, very potent. And this is my own work, so I trust it. All right. The opportunity to preach in the South would come during the first Great Awakening. Although blacks and whites were both affected by the first and second awakenings in America, their Christian experiences were vastly different in the preaching arena. These two periods of great revival saw not only an increase in the number of Christians accepting the Christian faith, but also an increase in those entering ministry. As the great revival preacher George Whitefield helped the first Great Awakening hit full stride in the 1740s, many black men were inspired to preach. The playing field, however, would be quite uneven for the black preacher in comparison to that of the white preacher. It might have been different. But God was clearly on the move, okay? So now we need to deal with an issue of, because we're moving towards the hush harbor services, meetings that black people had in private away from the plantation owners, and we're going to hit it just a touch, taste, this week, but we'll get even deeper next week. And this picture shows a black man preaching in front of a white slave owner, which was a requirement. So this is where we're going to kind of rest a little bit as we work through some of this. So let me read this. Albert J. Rubito's book. We read from this last week, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time expounding on this, but I need you to hear this again so that we can put everything in good context. All right? He talked about the revivals. This is important. He said, leaders of the revivals made special mention of the fact that blacks attended their gatherings in larger numbers than seen before. Some were allowed to attend by their masters. Others risked punishment to attend without permission. Not only did free blacks and slaves attend revivals, they also took active part in the services, praying, exhorting, and preaching. All classes of society were welcome to participate actively in prayer meetings and revival service in which the poor, the illiterate, and even enslaved were permitted to preach and pray in public. There are stories of blacks and whites in revival. Here it is right here. Revival services, weeping, singing, and dancing together. Now you have to understand, this is during slavery. This is during slavery that once God shows up, the Spirit of God doesn't believe in separation. This is so crucial. Once God shows up, then they're weeping and praying and hanging together. Same thing happened in Azusa Street, and people in their flesh came in. We'll get to it. Came in their flesh, and didn't like what they saw. But if they had caught the spirit of what was going on, these people aren't pretending. The anointing of God, the presence of God is there. And when he is, it purges out all of that ugliness, all of that racism. Beloved, it is so important. It is so crucial that we get that if you're walking in the spirit, those things don't matter. Listen, let me make it personal. Even though I look at things that are very hurtful, and I'm certainly affected by it, I guard my heart to walk in love, because somebody else is deceived. I've got to go in that direction. And I think, I hope this doesn't sound arrogant, I think that's what's going to make the difference as I continue to do this. That if I can maintain the love in my heart for my fellow man, then when I'm cutting through all of these spiritual walls and whatever, that I can keep the anger from making me get militant. Because, man, there's some stuff there that can easily, I have mercy for people that get upset when they look at some of the atrocities that have been perpetrated on black folks. But I ask God to guard my heart so I can fight, not ignoring any of it. I mean, y'all already know I'm raw. I'll deal with the truth. I don't skate around any of that. But I believe that that's what's going to make the difference. And this is an example. In the first and second Great Awakening, people were worshiping together. It didn't matter. Men, women, color, none of that mattered, because God was there. I don't want us to just run past that. We need to see that. And if there's something in your heart, black or white, watching this video, and it keeps you from feeling comfortable with everybody that is a brother or sister in Christ, then that's something you need to privately go and allow God to deal with that. Because these folks in the middle of slavery did. Thousands. At one point, 25,000 people were at the Cane Ridge Revival. And what had been separate didn't matter. Wherever God was moving, they were moving. Let me keep reading, because I'm telling you, this is so crucial. All right. The freedom and camaraderie was something never experienced since the institution of slavery was established. In the 1800s began with the famous Cane Ridge Revival that set the Second Great Awakening in high gear. A black minister, Old Captain, was given space to share the gospel. Although the event was segregated, its aftermath found both blacks and whites alike sharing in communion services together. Right? And here's an excerpt from the book that I showed you, by Paul Conkin's book, Cane Ridge, America's Pentecost. It gives this little insight. It says, none quite match Cane Ridge, at least in the extent of physical exercise. But these communions to the east quickly became more ecumenical, meaning more people participating, didn't matter who they were, with greater participation by other denominations. That didn't matter. And because of the level of black participation, it was much more interracial. There's the answer. More God. And we got this. Are you hearing me tonight? I have something to read to you, and then I'm going to go ahead and jump into this. Because I was going to do it differently, but let me do it this way. All right, listen. The greatest fear among slaveholders in their flesh, the greatest fear among slaveholders was the possibility of slave revolts. Slave owners that did permit their black slaves to preach the gospel as a norm only allowed it when they were present or a representative was present. Okay, that's what you see in this picture. Sermons were scrutinized to ensure nothing was being said that encouraged a desire for freedom from the slaveholder. Their fears, to some extent, I wrote this, realized in the rebellions led by memorable figures like one of my favorites, Denmark Vesey, Nat Turner, Gabriel Prosser, in and during the Second Great Awakening. Laws were enacted to prevent and to carefully regulate worship. The following information clearly shows that the power of the black preacher was a threat to slave owners who were not allowing or not willing to allow them to continue preaching without strict supervision. All right. Before I read that, let me show you something. I'm going to show you a video that explains this in a second, but this is the Slave Bible. This is actually one of the original copies of it. And this is, as you fold it open, it's what it looks like. Negro slaves, it's for them. There is a modern version of it that you can purchase. All right, I've been thinking about getting it into my collection, but it leaves things out. Doesn't add anything to it, but it leaves things out to ensure that what they're saying is godly, right? That the black man is supposed to be subservient to the white man because of the curse on Ham, which is inaccurate. I've already explained that. But, because if that's true, we leave things the way that it is. Why do we need to be taking things out of the Bible? Well, because they knew. They weren't ignorant of what the truth was. They just wanted to make their money. They wanted to continue their system of greed. Let me read this, and then I got a short video for you. In 1833, Alabama made it unlawful for slaves or free Negroes to preach unless before 5 respectable slaveholders, and when authorized by some neighboring religious society. So there was ordination that needed to be there as well. Georgia enacted a law in 1834 providing that neither free Negroes nor slaves might preach or exhort in an assembly of more than 7 unless licensed by justices on the certification of their ordained ministers. Other southern states soon followed with examples of these, passing more drastic laws prohibiting the assembly of Negroes after the early hours of the night and providing for the expulsion